All right, good evening. And our Daf Yomi sponsor for a week by Shmuley and Miriam Fuchs Le'ili Nishma Shmuley's mother, Bela Yentel Bas Elchanan Allah Shalom. May her neshama have an aliyah. And we are catch-up mode. We are still in catch-up mode. And we're moving. We're on Mem Beis, Amud Beis, very top. Amar Mar. Mar says, Rabbi Meir. Amar Meir says. Now we were having this conversation about two potential opinions of Rabbi Meir. We know that he doesn't require you to have the wrong intention throughout the entire avoda of the, but you cannot have you can have no intention at some point in the middle. So Rabbi Meir says, the question within Rabbi Meir is his opinion that because half a matir, half of a intent during half of the avoda ruins the avoda, or is it because he holds that you have to have the first half wrong and then you don't have to say anything in the second half, and we just continue your opinion into the second half? So now we're going to go into the this view of Rabbi Meir that where we're going to hold that Rabbi Meir holds it doesn't matter which half, right? Either way, as long as you have pigul as part of the avoda, it ruins it. Amar Mar, Rabbi Meir says pigul v'chayavin alav kares. This case, the case was that he brings this blood in. It's pigul, and you're chayev kares for it. So mechdi kares lo mechayev ad sheyikravu kol mati rov. You're not going to be chayev kares until you have made all of the applications of the korban according to the right way. Right? We said if you do anything wrong at some point during the korban, then the korban cannot become pigul. It has to be done right. Damar mar kihartzos kosher kachartzos pasol. Like we had said before, that just like the pasuk says, yeratzeh, that the korban shall be desired by a korban that's kosher. So also it says the word lo yeratzeh, it shall not be desired by a korban that's pigul. And so therefore we see that the rules are the same. You have to have a completely kosher korban in order for it to be pigul, other than that one thought. And for a korban to be kosher, it has to have all proper thoughts. So mahartzos kosher. So in order for it to be a kosher korban, ad sheyikruvu kol mati rav, you've got to have applied all of the applications. Afartzos psul, also the desire to make this into a korban that's pasul and pigul, ad sheyikruvu kol mati rav, until you have done all of the applications. Right? You've got to do all the applications correctly. Now, the ha kevin dechashiv be bifnim pesula. Now, in this circumstance, since he's had a thought of machshavas pigul, so it's become pasul, right? As soon as he had this thought inside the Beis Hamikdash that it would be pasul, keman delo adi dami. So that means that a pasul application means that it's like he didn't sprinkle at all, right? If you ruin it, so kihadar madi behechal ma'ibamahu dekadi. So now, if he's going to go into the Beis Hamikdash and he's going to sprinkle the rest of the way, so it's okay. So if he's going to sprinkle the rest of the way, I mean, what's he doing? Once the korban is already pasul, he went into the Beis Hamikdash, he went to the Kodesh Kodashim, he had pigul intention. Well, now the korban's pasul, right? So whatever he's doing, he's sprinkling. His sprinkling, it's ready and everything. It's just waiting. Very good. Thank you very much, Yehuda. So it is as though he's just sprinkling water. It's just water, because it's like the blood is worthless at this point. He's already ruined it. Right. So Amar. So therefore, you need to be the only way for he's presuming the only way. How's he once he's made it, once he's had pigul intention at the beginning? How is his korban going to be pigul afterwards, right? Because by definition, he's made it pasul, and now he's sprinkling pasul blood, and the pasul blood doesn't do anything, so it's as though he hasn't sprinkled it. So therefore, it's as though if you don't sprinkle the blood, we learned it doesn't work. So it's sort of a catch-22. Mm-hmm. So Amar Rabba says mishkachas lo be'arba parim u'bedalet seirim. The answer is, well, we can answer this because we had learned what happens if you started sprinkling in the Kodesh HaKodashim and then you drop the bowl. Then you can go get another animal and do it again. Get another animal, do it again. If you did it with 4 different animals, so then even though you have the first animal was pigul, the second Huh?
Wouldn't that be invalid?
No, that's valid. You can do that. And even though the first animal was pigul, the subsequent ones were not. So you're sprinkling proper blood now, right? It's not like we said that it was ruined by the first one. So therefore, the way that you would make it pigul by a korban bifnim is you'd have to spill out the blood, start again, get new blood, come back, sprinkling real blood, and that would be the problem. So Rava says, no, you don't have to go that far. You don't have to go that far. It's afilu tema bepar echad v'seir echad lepigulo miratza. He says, one second, what do we mean that the sprinkling has to be proper? We can't mean that it really has to be real and proper, because otherwise how did it become pigul, right? There has to be something has to have gone wrong, otherwise it wouldn't be pigul. Therefore, what we mean to say is that if you had intent to make it pigul at some point, so then then that pigul intent is still considered acceptable for the sake of pigul. And therefore, the rest of the blood is not invalidated, it's activated for pigul. And therefore, you don't need to come on the answer that he has to have multiple cows. You can just, multiple bulls. There was a conversation in the chat about, I kept saying cows, bulls, right?
Amen. I always like to say.
Okay, so now, let's go back. We had mentioned something. If we take our picture, since I have it, got a nice illustration since we have it.
What's that
Okay. This is from the Kahati Mishnayos Maseches Midos. The newer ones have in color even, so that's where this originated. So if you found it online, that is where it came from. Okay. So we're sprinkling the blood 43 applications. Where do we get this number 43? We happen to have mentioned that. So, Arbaim v'shalosh. Right? Where'd you get 43? V'hatanya Arbaim v'sheva. But we have another brisa that says that this number of sprinklings in the Beis HaMikdash is 47. So, let's count them up. First of all, you did the shechita of the animal in the north, right over here. Caught the blood. Walked into the Beis HaMikdash, assuming we didn't drop anything, walked into the Kodesh HaKodashim. In the Kodesh HaKodashim here, we sprinkled it 7 times. So that's 7, right? Then he brought it outside, handed it to another Kohen, got the blood of the goat, brought that inside, sprinkled that 7 times. We're up to 14. Goes back outside, he takes the blood of the bull, goes inside, sprinkles it inside the heichal towards the parochas. This is the curtain that's right here. Goes back outside, gets the goat, does that. That's another 14, so he's up to 28. Okay? Then he mixes the blood together of the two, and he is going to put 4 on the corners and then 7 on the top, right? So that brings us up to 11 plus, what did we say, plus 28? So that is 29, 39, right? And then, no, I have it wrong. 1 second. What did I miss? 43. 1 second. 14, he had 14 is 28. Then it's 4.
32.
32, and then there's 4, and then there's 4 more. 1 second. By Mesheva. What did I forget? I'm missing something. Hang on 1 second. I'll go back and figure out what I'm forgetting. Achas l'mayla v'sheva. Oh, I know what I didn't do, right? It's achas l'mayla v'sheva lamata. It's 8 in each section, right? He's going 1 up, 7 below. That's why I was counting it wrong, right? 1 up, 7 down. So therefore, it's 16 inside, then 16, which brings us to 32, then 11 more, which brings us to 43.
Yes.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how it works. Now, how do we have a brisa that says there's 47 blood applications? Ha-kiman de'amar me'arvim lekronos, ha-kiman de'amar ein marvin kronos. We have machlokas whether the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat get mixed. At what point do they get mixed? Before or after you apply the blood to the 4 corners? If you mix the blood before the 4 corners, then after you have the 36, sorry, what did I say? 30, right, 36? No. 32. Once you've done 32, you've done 16 and 16, you've done 32. Then you mix it together. Then you've got 4 and 7 is 11 more. That brings you to 43. However, if you didn't mix it yet, you first applied the bull on the 4 corners, then you applied the goat on the 4 corners, then you mixed it and you sprinkled 7 more on top, you'd have 4 extra ones, you'd be at 47. Okay, the Hatanya Arba'im Mishmona, but we've got another price that says 48 applications. So Command Amar Shirai Ma'akvin, that's according to the opinion that we had learned that said that pouring the blood into the spout on the corner of the Mizbeach is part of the blood sprinkling service. That is located right over here, this little corner of the Mizbeach. They bring the blood back outside and pour it right over there, right? That we saw on the nice picture of the Mizbeach, which is right here, right? Comes out the door, right into that little corner, little spout that's right over there, port right over there on the Mizbeach that's outside. Okay? So,
the images really help.
right, made a big difference, right? You say, okay, there it is. I see he's going in, he's going out, I know where he's going. Okay, good. So now,
But the middle.
so therefore, the one who, and Hakiman Da'amar ain't Shemir Akvin. So if you're going to count 48, 48 is that extra application or not, right? So if you count 47, you don't need it. If you count 43, we're going to mix the bloods together. Okay, Meisvei, we asked the question. Medvar Memurim, Bekmitza. So we asked the following question.
Das to the other person.
This kind of goes ahead with everybody's a guarantor.
This is the main thing.
Okay, this is asking a question on Rabbi Reish Lakish's understanding of Rabbi Meir's Shita. Rabbi Reish Lakish holds that Rabbi Meir holds that whatever his first opinion continues on through. That's why he holds. So it has to be, in order to have pigul intent, it has to be at the beginning and quiet at the end. If you were quiet at the beginning and then pigul at the end, that wouldn't be pigul, according to Rabbi Meir. So now we have a conflict with that. Meisvei. Bamedvar Mamurim, when is it that we say that you have a machshavas, a thought, an intent of pigul to ruin the korban, and we're talking about the korban mincha offerings now. So b'kmitza, if you are taking the kmitza, b'matan kli, when you are going to put that into the utensil, and again, all of the actions of the mincha offerings mimic a offering, one of the actions of the blood services that we had by the korban, by the Zevachim. So kmitza is the scooping of the crumbs of the flour. That is shchita. Matan bakli, you put it into a utensil. That's kabbalah. That's where you put the blood in the utensil. Ubehiluch, then you walk it to the mizbeach. That's where you walk the blood to the mizbeach. Right. Aval balo lahaktara. But now, if he comes to touch the mincha, right, he's going to put the. This is done by the kmitza and the lavona. Nasan es hakometz b'machshava ves lavona b'shtika. If he puts on the mizbeach the malika that he has, this portion, the kometz, I'm not saying malika, the kmitza, and then he also has the lavona that he's going to bring. He's going to take some of this spice and he's going to bring that, and that is 2 separate applications. So if he only has a pigul intent on one of the 2, if he puts the kmitza, he does kmitza with a thought of pigul, but not the lavona. He's quiet during the lavona. Or he's quiet during the kmitza and vesalavona machshava, and he has the thought of pigul by the intent. Rabbi Meir Omer pigul. That's where there's an argument. Rabbi Meir says it becomes pigul. V'chayav nov kares, and you're chayav kares. V'cham omrim ein ba kares ad she'yafagel b'kol ha matir. And the Chachamim are consistent, as we had said before. They require pigul intent during the entire service. You can't do it halfway. Now, Ktani Miho, the point that we're trying to make is, as hakometz b'shtika v'salavona b'machshava. One second. You said, according to you, Reish Lakish, you needed the first part of the service to be pigul. The second part could be quiet. But if the first part was quiet, the second part was pigul, that would not be pigul according to Reish Lakish, according to Rabbi Meir. So how are we? There's two parts of this offering that are being brought. They're throwing onto the fire the kmitza and they're throwing the lavona. So if he has pigul intent during the kmitza but not during the lavona, it's pigul according to Rabbi Meir. That makes sense. But why should it be that if he's quiet during the kmitza, which is the first part, and then he throws the lavona on with pigul intent, why should that be? Upolig. So why is he arguing with that? Right? Ema, the answer is kvar nasan es lavona b'machshava chada dahainu reisha. So he says, well, the ode. So he said, I'm sorry. That's I'm reading that wrong. That sorry. So the answer is,
That's called a makif means
so Ema kvar nosan lavona b'machshava. What we have to say is that the lavona was first. Meaning, even though the point that he's trying to make is that both the kmitza and the lavona are relevant, but even Rabbi Meir is going to require, in order for that to activate pigul, it has to be the first thing that you do. So you don't have to do the kmitza before the lavona. Generally, that was done, but it's lavona first. If you do lavona first, then that could activate pigul as well. Okay, well, chada. There's two problems with this, right? Chada. First of all, dehainu reisha. Then that's exactly the same point as you made in the first part, right? That you said the kmitza was first, and then you did pigul intent by the kmitza, and then not by lavona, and then you're going to say, okay, but first you did it by lavona, and not by the kmitza. What's the difference between the 2 points you're making? It's the exact same point. That's first of all. The ode, and furthermore, the hatanya, the achar kach, it says right in the Mishnah, then afterwards you brought the lavona, right? First you're doing the kmitza, and then afterwards you do the lavona. So therefore, it seems to be kasha, a problem against Reish Lakish's view of Rabbi Meir Shita. Okay, next Mishnah. These are the items that you cannot receive a punishment of for that you're not chayav because of pigul. Okay, so if you have an idea, a thought of pigul in these items, so if you eat the korban, you're not going to get if you eat them, then you are not chayav kares for them. What are they? Hakometz, the kemitza that you scoop out, the haktoras, the spices, v'halavona, and the frankincense, uminchas kohanim, and the korban mincha of the kohanim, uminchas kohen Mashiach, and the mincha of the kohen Mashiach that he brings half the morning, half in the afternoon, because the kohanim don't eat those. None of this are services that you actually consume. These are, this is going to be our point that the Mishnah is going to say at the end, these are matirim. Doing these services permit you to eat the korban later on, but they are not parts of the korban that you're eating. Remember that we said that in order to be chayav for pigul, you have to consume, you have to do a consumption, right? These are not consumables. V'hadam, and the blood. V'hanisachim haboim bifnei atzman. And if you have nisachim, if you have a korban, let's say somebody wants to bring wine or oil as a independent, bring it independently. When you bring your korban shalom, you're supposed to bring these items. You can bring it at the same time, or you can bring it later. If you bring it at the same time, then when you sprinkle the blood of the korban, these items become able to be eaten, in which case they would be pigul. But these items, if they're brought by themselves, are the korban themselves, so then therefore they are not pigul. Different Rabbi Meir, that's what Rabbi Meir says. The Chachamim says, even if these items are brought together with the animal, they are still not pigul. And not only that, but log shemen shel mitzora. So what about the oil that the mitzora, that somebody who's tzaras, he has to bring with his sacrifice? What is that status of that? So Rabbi Shimon says, "Ein chayav mishum pigul." You're not chayav pigul for that. And we're going to learn in the Gemara all the reasons why all these. Rabbi Meir says, "Chayav and alav mishum pigul." You're going to be chayav pigul. Why? Shadam ha'osham matiro. Because what makes it permissible for the kohen to consume the leftover oil? When you bring the korban asham. So they're related. Once you do the sprinkling of the blood of the asham, that becomes permissible. The chol sheyesh lo matirin, the rule is that if it is something that becomes permissible, bein la'adam bein l'mizbeach, for a human being to consume it, or for the mizbeach to burn it, chayav and alav mishum pigul, then you can be chayav for consuming that item for consuming pigul. But something that is not is the permitter itself, that you're not chayav if you eat that. Ha'ola dama matir es bisara lemizbeach. For the korban ola, the blood, when you sprinkle the blood, that permits the meat to be burned on the mizbeach. Ve'ora lekohanim, and it permits the skin to be given to the kohanim. Olas ha'of, so the bird offering, the bird ola, dama matir es bisara lemizbeach. Then the blood is permitting the meat to go on the mizbeach. There's no skin that's given to the kohen by a bird, right? Chatas ha'of, by the bird offering that's a chatas, dama matir b'sara kohanim. The blood is going to permit the kohanim to eat, to consume that bird, right? As we learned. Parim hanisrafim, v'seirim hanisrafim. If you have the bulls that are burnt, those are the ones that you sprinkle their blood inside the Beis HaMikdash, and the goats that are burnt, where you sprinkle their blood inside the Beis HaMikdash. Daman matiris emurehen li karev. The blood is permitting their organs to be burned, to be brought. The emurim, not the whole part of the animal which is burnt outside, but the innards which are burnt on the mizbeach. Rabbi Shimon says, Kol she'enu al ha-mizbeach ha-chitzon kishlamim, ein chayavim l'mishum pigol. Rabbi Shimon has an interesting shita. He says, the source for pigol is shlamim. If you remember when we learned the rules of pigol, that pasuk that we were learning came from shlamim. Therefore, only korbanos that are similar to shlamim have pigol application. Korbanos that you're going to throw the blood inside the Beis HaMikdash are not similar to a shlamim, because shlamim, all the blood is done outside. So therefore, there's no pigol rules for the korbanos done inside. That's what Rabbi Shimon holds. Okay, says Ula, Amar Ula. Ula says, Kometz pigol, let's say I do a kmitza. And I do a kmitza he does the kmitza in order to eat it outside of its time or place. Well, let's say time, right? To make a pigol, right? He's eating it outside of its proper time. Then he takes the kmitza, shehalo al gabe mizbeach. Now we know that korban is now pasul, right? But he takes this kmitza anyway, and he brings it up onto the mizbeach. Paka pigulo mimenu. The pigol has left it. Right? And that means, right, that we're going to explain.
The pigol left it. What does that mean? It?
Oh, that's a great question. The Gemara is going to ask that, right? What does that mean? It's no longer pigol? What does that mean? Im acherim mevi lidei pigol. And now we're going to explain what that means, except this is going to be even worse. If other items can bring this to become pigol, hu atzmo lo kol shekain, then shouldn't this item itself be able to make itself pigol? Well, my kamar, what are we even saying here? Because first you said that it wasn't pigol, and then you're arguing that it is pigol, right? The argument that you're making is exactly the opposite of what you were trying to say. So what is going on? What is Ula's statement? What is he trying to say? So hachi kamar. This is what Ula means by this statement. Im eno miskabel, right? If this kmitza, remember we said that the rule by pigol is that it has to be miratza, it has to be desired. If this kmitza, which is pigol, would not be allowed to stay on the mizbeach after it was brought up on the mizbeach, heich mevi achirim lidei pigol. How could it then be creating a korban that's pigol? It would be so puzzle that you couldn't burn it. Then it would be invalidating the whole concept of pigol. Pigol works because the rest of the korban goes through as originally intended. Therefore, the fact is that the kmitza must be able to be brought as intended, right? And obviously not ideally so, but you can bring it as intended, because if you don't say that, then how is it making it? How does pigol?
I thought we said in the Mishnah there is no pigol for. Or there's.
Well,
you're just not chayav.
You're not chayav kares for eating it, for consuming it.
Still pigol applies to.
So my kamash malon. So what is Ula's statement even saying? That's the point, right? What is he saying? He's saying it's not pigol. Well, what is he saying? If, as you're pointing out, right, if you're right on the ball, right, if it means to say you're not chayav if you eat this kmitza for pigol, tanina. We just learned our Mishnah that said Elu dvarim shein chayav le'ev mishum pigol. These are the list of things that they are not pigol. Hakomitz v'aktors v'alavono minchas kohanim minchas kohen mashiach minchas nesachon v'hadam. The whole list. Right? So we already all learned that this kmitza that you scooped up, you had pigol intent. If I now go, yummy, and I eat it, there's no kares there. Why? Because it's not something that it's a matir in itself. It's not something else gets sprinkled and it becomes permissible. Ella, what does it mean? Dim alu lo yardu. It means that kmitza, if you brought it onto the mizbeach, don't take it off. You might think it's puzzle. What are you doing bringing something that's puzzle up on the Mizbeach? The answer is, and we're going to see, that the Mizbeach has the ability that when you bring some types of psulim, if you bring them on the Mizbeach, it's better to leave them up there. The Mizbeach takes care of it. Okay? That's the point. Tanina, we learned that in a Mishnah. Halon vayotze v'atami shenishchat chutz lizmana v'chutz limkomo. Let's say you have meat that you leave it overnight, or you have blood, or let's say the emurim, right? You're supposed to burn them that day, and you leave them overnight.
Makes it invalid.
It's puzzle, right? Vehayotze, or if you take it outside of the azara, which also makes it puzzle. Or it becomes tameh, which also makes it puzzle. It had shchita done by somebody who had intent to consume it.
It should be puzzle.
Also puzzle. These are all things that make it puzzle. Im alu, however, if they were brought on the mizbeach, some coin wasn't paying attention, we brought it up there. Lo yardu, don't take it down.
Why is that? It should be an invalid korban.
Because the rule of the mizbeach is that even though something is puzzle, once you bring it on the mizbeach, don't take it down. So if that's the case, why is Ula telling us this? We have a Mishnah that says it right out. So why is Ula?
Why would you accept if it's puzzle?
Because that is the power of the. We are going to see a pasuk. The power of the mizbeach is that it neutralizes the psul. Once you bring it up there, the psul is not our issue, not a problem anymore. That doesn't work with all things, right? But that works with these psulim.
When we say bring it up to the mizbeach, do we mean like put it on the fire or just like go up the ramp?
It's going to be put onto. They're going to put the pieces onto this big section here.
Where's the section allowed to keep up?
The middle one. That's the keeper, right? That's correct. That's what it's called, right?
What is it? What is it?
It's a pile of coals.
Oh, it's popcorn.
Yes. I don't know why they made these big, huge bonfires, right? And that's
Yeah, I don't understand. Where's the actual?
That's their actual burning they put on the middle, right? Because that is a heap of coals, and then they went. That's where the ashes of all the burnt things were swept and kept, right? So they would pile it. These are real bonfires. Yes, there were multiple fires, which we'll get to by all those different fires are there, right? But those are additional fires. No, not in this piece. I don't remember. Not sure. I mean, it's been 6 years or so. So I have to catch me up. Okay.
Cool.
Now, so we learned that in a Mishnah. So the answer is the Ella dim yardu yalu. The answer is, well, let's say a very worried Kohen saw this up there and he said, "Oh no, that's puzzle," and he took it down, which he's not supposed to. But let's say he did. Now you say, okay, it's down. Now leave it down. The answer is no. Bring it back up. Once it was up there, it's supposed to be up there. And even if somebody brought it down, bring it back.
If you didn't bring it back, did you get lashes?
It's a positive commandment. I can say I'm not sure whether that's a good question, Yud. If that's a lo sase, I think it says im alu lo yardu. Where's the pasuk? I don't know if we've quoted a pasuk yet. Let's see if we go on and see where the pasuk is. Whether it's a positive mitzvah. What's going to depend on is if it's a mitzvah to burn it or whether it's a lo sase, don't take it down. Right? So hanami tanina, we learned that in a Mishnah. Kishem shim yardu lo yalu. Right? That the Mishnah says exactly the opposite. Just like if you brought it up, you shouldn't take it down. If you brought it down, don't bring it back up. Right? So that's not what Ula says. Lo tzricha. So the answer is no. What happens is shemashla bahena or. What the difference is if the fire catches onto it, once it's been singed, this item has been singed, then it should belong back up on the mizbeach. That's the difference. The Mishnah says if you bring it up there and you haven't thrown it into the fire yet, and then somebody grabs it and takes it down, don't bring it back up again. But once it's in the fire, then you should bring it up. So hanami amra ula chada zimna. Problem is Ula's already said that one time. Ula said that somewhere else. Da amar Ula says lo shanu ela shelo mashla behena, or this is when the fire doesn't take it about mashla behena, or if the fire does grab onto it, yalu, then bring it back up. So, Ma'udatema, what would you have thought? Hani mili, aver de mechaber. The answer is, you know why Ula says it twice? One time he's talking about animal sacrifices. And if you've got a big, huge piece of meat, you throw it into the fire, and it gets singed, and then some other kohen grabs it and takes it out, you go, okay, well, bring it back. Why? This piece of meat has been singed. Therefore, it belongs up there. Aval kometz, but kmitza is crumbs. And therefore, if you threw the crumbs into the fire and some of them got singed and others did not, you might think that the ones that didn't get singed are not singed. And if you take them down, you don't bring that back up. So therefore, avakometz demifras, it's all separate pieces. Emalo, I would say no. Kamashmon. So therefore, Ula's point is the kamitza is all one object. Once some of the kmitza gets singed, all of the kmitza goes up. Which means that Amar of Achai says very interesting. Hilkach, therefore, Hai kometz pigol de palgei machis aara upalgei aske amaracha. That let's say somebody has this pigol kmitza, half of it they brought up to the mizbeach, and half of it is in the utensil down here, and umashla boaor, and the fire catches on the part of it that is on the mizbeach. Masikna lekule lechatchila, the part that is on the floor has to get brought up lechatchila, right? Because you say, well, it never went up, so therefore it shouldn't go down. The answer is, well, since part of it did go up, this part needs to go up also. So therefore, that's the chiddush, right? That even though part of it is still down there, you bring it up. Okay, that's interesting. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yitzchak says in Rabbi Yochanan, Hapigol v'hanosar v'hatame. If you've got an animal that is puzzle because of pigol, or puzzle because of nosar. Nosar is when we leave it overnight. The meat is left over past its time that it can be eaten. Ve'hatame, the meat is tameh. Sheholan legabe mizbeach, and you bring it onto the mizbeach. Paka iser mehen. The prohibition is gone, and you're supposed to leave them on the mizbeach for the mizbeach to consume them. Amar Rav Chisda, Mari Dichi. Rav Chisda says, "Oh my goodness." Meaning in the name of the person who says this.
OMG.
OMG, that's correct. Mizbeach mikvah tahara. He says, how does that work? A mizbeach is a mikvah. You dunk something in and put something on mizbeach and it becomes tahar. It's not a mikvah. How does a mizbeach do that? So Amar Rabbi Zera says, Shemashla bahen haor. The answer is when the fire burns it, that is, changes the item, and now it's considered part of the mizbeach, and it doesn't come down.
Sometimes you can't put the mikvahs. You have to do put out part of rolling water and dip it in.
Well, we're questioning that the mizbeach is not a mikvah, right? That's our point, right? Not that a mikvah works. We're pointing out that a mizbeach should not, because it's not a mikvah. The answer is once the fire singes it, it is.
Is there a difference between nosar and lun?
Nosar and lun? No. Lun is what we would call the emurim left overnight, or the blood left over past its time. Nosar is what we would call the meat. Right? The meat is going to be nosar, but it's basically the same idea. Past chutz lizmano. Right? Meisiv Rav Yitzchak bar Bisna. That's as far as I understand it is. That's where we use that word. Meisiv Rav Yitzchak bar Bisna. Rav Yitzchak bar Bisna says, Acherim omrim, others say, Vetum also a love. Right? The pasuk. Okay, we're going to ask this a question against what Rabbi Yochanan. This statement that Rabbi Yochanan made, that pigol nosar and tameh gets up in the mizbeach, singed, it's gone. Now, we said that the pasuk is talking about, the question that we're asking is, the pasuk we're dealing with. Let's see, the pasuk says, a person that eats meat from the korban shlamim that belongs to Hashem, vetumaso alav, and now this is where it becomes interesting. Vetumaso alav could either mean and its tuma is upon it, or and his tuma is upon him. So v'nichrasa nefesh me'ameh, then the person gets kares. Now that makes a big difference, because if it's his tuma is on him, then it means the person is tameh and the meat is not. So a person who is tameh eats kodesh meat gets kares, or is the pasuk talking about the meat? In which case, a person who's tahor, who eats a korban that is tameh, he gets kares. So which is it? Okay, so we're going to learn from the pasuk. How are we going to know this pasuk is talking about this brisa is proving from various sources that that this pasuk is talking about when the person is tameh, not when the meat is tameh. If the meat is tameh, a person who's tahor eats tameh meat, he doesn't get kares. He's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to say gets malchus. He does not get kares. Somebody who is himself tameh, who eats tahor meat, he gets kares. Okay, so now the brisa is going to continue. Acherim omrim, others are going to say that from the pasuk says vetumaso alav, its tuma is upon him. And now here's the way it works. We're going to quote the whole brisa in a moment. The Gemara often does this, where it says, let's bring the part of the brisa that's our question, and then later on we'll say, hey, as long as we're talking about that brisa, gufa, let's talk about that whole brisa. So don't worry with the fact we're starting in the middle of the brisa. Here's our important point. Misha tuma porachas mimenu. This says its tuma is upon it, which means you need to be talking about something that has tuma now, but can have that tuma removed. A person can have tuma removed by going to the mikvah. A piece of meat is tameh. You can't dunk a piece of meat in the mikvah and have it removed. It's not a utensil, right? People in utensils can get put in a mikvah, not a steak. Therefore,
if you put something in a mikvah, it's going to ruin it.
It doesn't matter about ruining it. It matters that it's not a utensil, right? Right. So yotza basar she'ein tuma parachas mimenu. So therefore, this pasuk cannot be talking about the meat because you can't remove tuma from it. Now. Ve'im Isa, if what you're saying is true, Rabbi Yochanan, of course you can remove tuma from meat. How so? Harei tuma parachas mimenu al yedeha, or you can put it on the mizbeach, get it singed. Once it gets a little singed on the mizbeach, the tuma leaves. So therefore, this proof doesn't work.
We didn't say that the tuma leaves. We said that the isser leaves. Is that maybe it's different, right?
Fair.
Yeah, or maybe the Gemara is just assuming, it's impossible you leave tuma up on the mizbeach.
So let's see what Rava, the couple of the answers. That's a good point, though. Rava says al yedei mikvah ka'amrinon. It says, the point of it's tuma that leaves it through the mikvah. Well, Rava, that midi mikvah ksiv doesn't say that in the pasuk. Rava, that's nice that you're saying that, but the pasuk doesn't say that. Pasuk says the tuma can leave it. It doesn't say how. El Amar of Papa says, "Bebasar shleimim askinon," right? De lo chazi bebasar shlemim askinon. De lo chazi la krava. We're talking about meat from a shlemim in that pasuk, and the meat from a shlemim doesn't go on the mizbeach. The meat from the shlemim is delicious. It is what people eat, and therefore, the question is, how are you going to make the meat of the shlemim tahor? Don't tell me you're going to bring it on the mizbeach, because you don't bring a shlomim meat on the mizbeach. So that's not what's going on. So that's his answer. Ravina says, I'll explain why. Vetuma so alav, its tuma's upon it. Misha tuma parakas mimenu keshu shalim. It has to be something that the tuma can depart from it without damaging the it. Right? Yatza basar, the meat. Dover shein tuma so parachas keshu shalim. It wouldn't be something that the tuma leaves when it's complete, because you have to burn it. It has to be singed. Ela keshu chaser, you've got to remove it. So therefore it doesn't bother us that the brisa doesn't bother Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Gufa, let's go back and talk about this brisa now. Now that we got into the middle of the brisa, start from the beginning. Pasuk says, "Vetuma so alav." His tuma is upon him. How do we know that this pasuk talking about kares is telling us it is the person who's tamei and the meat that's tahor, not that the person is tahor and the meat is tamei? Betumas hakuf hakas medaber. This pasuk telling when the person is tamei. Atamar betumas hakuf. You think it means that when the person is tamei, eno ella betumas basar, or is it when the meat is tamei? Namar kan tumaso v'namar laholon tumaso. First proof, because it says the word tumaso here, and it says the word tumaso there. The tumaso there is in Bamidbar. Kol hanogea b'meis b'nefesh ha'adam asher yamus lo yischata. Right, anybody who touches a dead body, that person who dies, right? He lo yischata is mishkan Hashem timei. He can't go into the Beis Hamikdash area. Right? And if he hasn't had the sprinkling of the paraduma, cannot go into the area of the Beis HaMikdash. V'nichrasa nefesh ahim Yisrael. If you do, then you get kares. Okay? That is a person who's tamei. So, malahalam betumas haguf hakas medaber, afkan betumas hakuf hakas medaber. So those two psukim use the word tumaso. Whenever the word, it seems like we have it's like a gzer shava, right? When it says the word tumaso, it means the person. Just like the person gets kares over there when he's the tamei person, so to here, it's a tamei person. Okay? Rabbi Yossi's second answer. Hol v'nemru kodshim b'loshim rabim v'nemar tuma b'loshim yochid. He says, well, because if you read the pasuk carefully, right, the pasuk says that the nefesh, the korban, whenever it's talking about the korban, it's korban shlomim, right, plural. All things about the korban are plural. Then, when it talks about the tuma, it's singular. So if the korban is plural and the tuma is singular, it means that we're talking about the person who is a single person. So therefore, when it switches from plural to singular, you know singular means, right? This is the grammar lesson. Since you switch to singular, we're talking about the person.
It says Zevach Hashlamim, it doesn't say Zivche.
That's true, right? So what does it say?
Maybe that's just how the grammar works. Maybe it goes on.
Zevach Hashlamim, yeah.
I'm not a master at grammar.
No, it should say Mizivche Shlamim. I mean, I like what you're saying. But he says that Zevach Shlamim. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Zevach is a descriptor of the Shlamim, which is plural, right? That's what you have to say. Okay. Rebbe says, V'achal ve'achal, Pasuk says, and he ate. Betumas haguf hakasim medaber. That proves that it is a person who's tamei. Now, what is that talking about? Don't worry, the Gemara is going to ask. That one doesn't make a lot of sense. So hang on to that. Right? That's why you have to read ahead. So that one doesn't make sense. Acherim amru, others say v'tumaso alav. This is the one we brought. V'tumaso alav, misha tuma parachas. It has to be something that the tuma can leave. Yata basar, that means it cannot be talking about meat. Tuma she'in tuma parachas bimino, because the tuma cannot leave that. Okay, let's go back to this one that was weird. Amar Mar, Rebbe says, Ve'achal betumas haguf hakosim medaber. Ve'achal means that it's talking about the person. My mashma, what are you talking about? How does the fact that it uses the word ve'achal and he eats to mean that he is the person who's tamei and the thing that he's eating is the tahor meat? Amar Rava says, Kol kra d'lo mefarish le Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi v'chol masnisa d'lo mefarsho lo Rav Zeiri. If you don't have a pasuk explained by Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi or a brisa that gets explained by Rav Zeiri, lo mefrishi. You really haven't heard pshat, right? You gotta. These guys are good. Hachi amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi. This is what Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi said. Whole pasuk hakasa b'rosh nekeva. The pasuk starts out feminine form. Ve'hanefesh asher tochal basar. She, the nefesh is feminine, female word. The nefesh, she eats the meat, right? V'sayim b'rosh nekeva. Then it goes on and it says, hanefesh hahi me'ameha. Goes back to feminine. V'loshon zachar be'emtza. And then in the middle, it talks about ve'achal. In the masculine, v'achal, he eats, right? Mm-hmm. So therefore, betumas haguf hakasav medaber. That means that we must be talking about the tumas haguf. Okay, so what is that? What are we talking about? How does he prove that? He says that that's really in the next pasuk, meaning the pasuk that comes next, pasuk chaf aleph, right? We were quoting pasuk chaf. Yud Tes and Chaf. Pasuk Chaf Aleph does the same format. The Pasuk Chaf Aleph says, "V'nefesh kisiga b'chol tamei betumas adam o bebehema." A person who touches anything that's tamei, a tuma of a person or of an animal, tuma o b'chol sheketz tamei, or any sheketz that's tamei. V'achal mibsar zevach hashamim, and he eats the korban asher Hashem. Now that's very clear. He is the one that's tamei. And it is the korban that it's talking about in the middle. And he eats the korban. Now, the pasuk switches female to male, back to female. Therefore, what he's saying is that if in the next pasuk, switching from female to male, back to female, is talking about the person being tamei and the korban being tahor, therefore, the previous pasuk, which follows the same pattern, female to female, is also likewise talking about the person being tamei and not the korban. Right? Therefore, all he says is ve'achal, right? But that's the whole very long Rashi here. Whole pasuk kavashini b'lashon nekeva b'seim b'lashon nekeva. If you want to see that whole long Rashi, that's basically the summary of that long Rashi. Okay, masnisa, Yep. Masnisa de Tanya. So
I know sometimes when
what about the brisa that Zeiri explained? Right? We said that we had Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avudimi. He has a great psukim, but we promised that if you haven't heard the explanation of Zeiri, you haven't heard a great explanation. So here's the difficult brisa. Here we go. The Tanya. Im nemru kalos lama nemru chamuros. V'im nemru chamuros lama nemru kalos. Why is it This is a very cryptic statement. We're going to deal with some things that are strict and some things that are lenient here. We're not quite sure what we're talking about, strictnesses and leniences, but we're dealing with the issue of eating Meiser and Truma when you are Tameh. There are things, right? We're going to talk about Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni is a lenient Meiser because it has, anybody can eat it, right? It's not just for the Levi or just for the Kohen. Anybody eats it. That's lenient, right? When we're talking about the Chumrah ones, then we'd be talking about Truma, right? Truma is very strict. Has to be given to the Kohen. Chayav Misa if a Zar eats it, right? So that's a very strict one. Then we've got types of Tuma also. We have Tumas Mace. That's a very strict one. We have other types of Tuma that are less strict. So now, the question is we're asking is, if the pasuk tells us by the lenient ones, why does it tell us by the strict ones? And if it says by the strict ones, why does it tell us by the lenient ones? So then the brisa continues, and we don't know what's going on here, so don't worry about it. If memru kalos velo chamuros, if it had told us the punishment by the lenient ones, but not by the strict ones, hayisi omer, I would have thought ala kalos belav. Then if I the lenient ones, you'd get a losase. Ala chamuros bemisa, but then you do the strict ones, you'd get a misa penalty. Lekach nemru chamuros. Therefore, the pasuk has to say the chamuros to tell me not so. The machmir ones, you also get a los haseh, right? You don't get misa for the strict ones either. Vim nemru chamuros, and if the pasuk had told me that by the strict ones I get a los haseh, velo nemru kalos, and it hadn't told me that by the lenient ones I also get a los haseh, hayisi omer, I would have said ala chamuros yechayev ala kalos yehi pater. The machmir ones I get a los haseh. That means the lenient ones I should get nothing. Lekach namru kalos. Therefore, the pasuk is telling me even the lenient ones. Well, my kalos or my chamuros, that's the first question. What are we talking about, the strict ones and the lenient ones? Ilema kalos meiser chamuros truma. Let's start with the possibility. The lenient ones, the Torah tells us that by the lenient ones that that we're talking about meiser sheni, and the stringent ones are truma. So now, Hayisi Omer Bemisa, right? Now read the Brisa. The Brisa says, I would have thought that by Truma, if you're Tameh and you eat it, you get Misa. Well, Hashanami, Habamisa. First of all, that is the punishment. Yeah, if you're Tameh and you eat Truma, you get Misa. So what does the Brisa mean? I would have thought you get Misa. Of course, that is what you get. The two, furthermore, Ve'ilo Nemru Hayisi Omer Bemisa, that, how is that even logical? I would have thought, based on the fact that the lenient ones, I get a losase, I get misa by the stringent one. Don't we have a rule of dayolavo min adin lios kinodun? When you're learning a kal v'chomer, you don't go more strict with the strict one, you go the same. You'd say, if the lenient one, I get a losase, then the punishment wouldn't have been written by the stringent one. I would have said, the stringent one for sure is a losase. I wouldn't have jumped up a punishment. That's not how kal v'chomers work. Ella, so that's not how you explain it. Ella, kalos, tumas sheretz, chamuros, tumas mates. Okay, so what we must be dealing with here is, lenient means the tuma is a lenient type of tuma, and the stringent one is a stringent type of tuma. Now, ubamai, what are we dealing with here? Are we talking about truma or are we talking about meiser again? Iba truma, if we're talking about truma, edi v'edi, hubamisa. It doesn't matter whether it's tumas sheretz or tumas of mace. If you eat truma in that status, you get misa. So the brisa is incorrect. The brisa says the lenient one you'd get losase. Not true. If you're talking about the lenient tuma and you eat truma, you are chayev misa. So that's not going to work. The two, and furthermore, lekach nemru chamuros. That's why they wrote the stringent ones to belav ha b'misa. What do you mean? Because without that, I would have thought that you'd get misa, right? But so therefore, no, but you do get misa, right? I would have thought you get misa, but you do. So therefore, that's not how to interpret this brisa either. We're running out of possibilities. So now, we're going to skip parentheses. Meiser, if we're talking about eating meiser sheni, so now, imlo nemru chamuros, right? Now we got to read this brisa again. If we didn't say the stringent ones, i.e. that the stringent ones get a losase, Hayisi Omer al hachamuros b'misa, so that I would have thought that the chamuros get misa. Ha mituma sheretz ka'osya. So we're dealing with tuma sheretz, right? You're saying that based on the fact that if I would have eaten meiser sheni with tuma of sheretz touching the dead creature, that would have implied that if I had touched tumas mace of a dead body, I would get misa. That's not how a kal v'chomer works. The stringent one wouldn't be any worse of a penalty than the lenient one. So therefore that doesn't work. Oh, so we ran out of explanations. So Amar Zeiri. Zeiri came along and saved us. Kalos tumos sheretz, chamuros tumas mace. The lenient ones is the tuma, and the chamuros is the tuma of mace. Okay, so here's how it works. Here's how you read it. Ilu namar tumas sheretz v'namar meiser. If the Torah would have told us that the punishment for being tamei tumas sheretz and touching meiser sheni, the two lenient ones, the kalos, the two lenient ones, and utruma, and also would have told us that that is the punishment by truma, velo namra tumas mace, but had not told me what the punishment for eating truma while you are tamei tumas mace, hayisi omer, I would have thought kalos al hakalos belav, that since the two leniencies, you get the two leniencies together, you get the lenient tuma and the meiser sheni, you get malchus. Vela chamuros, if I get the two stringent ones together, i.e. tumas mace and truma, the punishment is vela chamuros b'misa, I get misa. Umi dekalos ala chamuros b'misa. Now, I'm going to, the Torah, if I'm going to know that the Torah is going to tell me that if I am tamei tumas sheretz and I touch truma and I eat truma, I also get misa. Now, 1 second, that tells me that if I had two stringencies, I got misa. I had two leniencies, I got malchus. One stringency and one misa, one stringency and one leniency, which one do I get? Well, the Torah would have told me that if I have one stringency, i.e. tumas mace, one stringency truma and one leniency of tumas sheretz, I would have gotten misa for that. Chamuros nami ala kalos b'misa. I would have assumed the reverse also works. That if I was dealing with tumas mace, the stringent one, and talking about meiser sheni, the lenient one, I would also get misa. Because one leniency and one stringency leads to misa. That would have made sense. Lekach namru chamuros. That's why the Torah had to go back and explain to me by tumas mace that you do not get, tumas mace, you do not get misa, you get a losase if you eat meiser sheni that way. That's only a losase. Good.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Okay, this is a fair place to stop.
Yeah.
Kol sheyesh, right?
Kol sheyesh at the two. Okay.
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Mem daled. So that puts us